Hey, what's up, everybody? In this video tutorial, we're going to be taking a look at how to do the IPN for the miniature train project. Basically, we're going to be creating a presentation. There's two things that we get from the presentation. The first thing is we get an exploded view, which we're going to be using Snapshot for. The second thing we're going to be able to do is create an animation video of what this is going to look like if we were to actually take it apart and actually how to put it together. So in order to do the IPN, what we have to do first is come up here, create a new file, go into your English, your standard templates, and come up with your standard inch IPN and go ahead and hit create. Okay, it's now going to be asking you what assembly you want to bring in. So I'm going to come out here and go to my folder where everything is stored so far as my parts and my assembly goes. I'm going to be looking for my assembly and going ahead and opening that up. All right, so one issue that we have that you're going to see here, my case, and this is a great learning thing. If we came out here and go to the home view, all right, this is what I'm seeing. And this is exactly the reason why you always ground your first part with your assembly. So if you did need to come out here and fix this, here's how we could do it. All right, so I could come over here and use this icon at the bottom of the navigation bar. It's called Look At. And if we pick on Look At and we pick on a flat face on this, it's going to turn it plan where we can actually see what that view looks like. Now that I have that, I can see it's not even oriented, okay, to the actual view cube. So what I can do is I can right click here on the home view and I can set the current view as front, and now that is sitting as the front view in my view cube as well as the front of my actual train. Now I'm going to come up here, pick the top left-hand corner of the view cube. I'm now going to come up to the home view, right click on it, set the current view as home, and pick on fit the view. So now we have reoriented this to our front as well as our home. Okay, so every time now I'm hitting the home icon, it's going to take me back to this view, and we need that in this case because when we're doing all the tweaking of components here in just a moment, we're always going to be referencing back to our home view. All right, so now we're ready to get things started. So I'm going to come up here and go to tweak components. All right, and here's how easy it is. Just think of it this way. The first parts that we're pulling off are going to be the last parts that are going in if we were to actually animate this. All right, we don't have to just do one part at a time. We can do multiple parts. We can do sets of parts. It's really kind of up to what you want. Just when you're doing this, just please remember, do not allow ghosting to happen. And what I'm talking about with ghosting is make sure we have parts that are not magically going through other parts. All right, we want to keep this as real as we can. All right, so in our first case, I'm going to come out here and pick on the linkage arm. And when I do that, I can see this triad shows up, and that's totally fine. But what I'm also going to do is I'm going to bring out an entire set. So I'm going to hold down the control key, and I'm going to go ahead and pick the linkage peg. We can see the blue highlight is there. All right, and I'm also going to hold down the control key and pick on this linkage peg as well. All right, now what I'm going to do is come to one of these arrows on the triad, and I'm going to be determining which direction I want this to go. So I want these to come straight out. So I'm going to go ahead and pull these straight out. All right, now when I'm pulling these straight out, all right, there's two things that's happening. First thing is I'm going to go ahead and make sure this is always in the isometric view for the view cube. And the second thing is I want to make sure to leave enough room where I can also pull out these wheels and these axle pegs and make sure that there's sort of with this white background or buffer area between the parts so everything is sort of separated. So I'm going to go ahead and just pull this out just a little bit. And I'm going to go ahead and just green check it. I'm now going to come back into tweak components, and this time what I'm going to do is pick on this linkage peg, hold down the control key and pick on this linkage peg, and now I can go ahead and grab the arrow, pull these out, and I'm keeping that buffer area between those parts. I'm going to go ahead and green check it. Okay, now I'm going to come up, tweak components again. I'm going to be picking on this axle, holding down the control key and picking this axle, using the arrow, okay, to pull this out. Okay, keeping the buffer area between them. And then finally, tweak components one more time, pick on this wheel, hold down the control key, pick this wheel, and now I can go ahead and grab this arrow, okay, and pull these out. So green checking it. So once again, everything is always going to be locked into the isometric view. We can see we have that buffer area around this. Now I can go ahead and start tweaking my other components. So tweak component, pick the cow catcher. I'm going to grab this arrow and pull this out, keeping that buffer area between it. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and just flip this over, and I'm going to go ahead and use tweak components. I'm going to pick both the hitch magnet and the hitch peg. I'm going to send this back into our home view. Okay, and now I can go ahead and pull these out. So keeping the buffer area there, I'm going to go ahead and green check it, tweak components again, grabbing the linkage peg, and I'm going to go ahead and pull this out, keeping the buffer area around that. Once again, we're still locked into the isometric view. All right, so we're good to go. All right, so tweaking components one more time. I'm going to go ahead and grab the stack. Okay, I'm going to pull this way up because if you think about it, now my wheel, my axle peg, linkage arm, and linkage peg all need to come in this area, so I need to leave some area right here. So I'm going to green check it. And now I'm going to go ahead, tweak components again, flip this over to the other side, and I'm going to be talking to my linkage peg, linkage arm, and linkage peg again. Sending this back into my home view, using the arrow on the triad and pulling this out. And make sure I have enough room for the axle pegs and wheels. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and green check it. Tweaking components again. I'm going to be grabbing onto this linkage peg, holding the control key and grabbing this linkage peg. Using the triad, I'm going to go ahead and pull this out, leaving that buffer area around it. Okay, and once again, I'm back into the isometric view. All right, so let's go ahead and send this around, tweak components. I'm going to grab this entire set. So it's going to be the wheel holding the control key, grab this axle peg, holding control key, axle peg, control key, and wheel. Send this back into the isometric view. Using my triad, I'm going to go ahead and pull those out. Okay, like so, where we can still sort of see the wheels and keep the buffer area around it. And one last time, tweak components. It's going to be both this axle peg holding the control key and this axle peg. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and just pull this out with the wheel or the triad arrow and green checking it. So everything has basically now been tweaked. Everything has been separated. And you can kind of see a preview of what it is we've done. So I'm going to go ahead and send this to the beginning. I'm going to hit the play button. And now we're going to see how all these parts are going to be pulled off of this. Okay, once again, there's no ghosting that's happening. Axle peg comes out, wheels come out. Okay, now it's going to be the cow catcher coming out, the hitch magnet and the hitch peg. Those are both going to separate. We have the stack coming up, linkage arm and pegs coming out. We're going to have our wheel, and then the axle pegs coming out of the wheel. So everything is completely and totally separated. Everything is looking really good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and fast forward this all the way to the end, make sure everything is able to be here on the screen. And now what I'm going to come up and do is pick on New Snapshot View. So that has now been saved for me to use later on. Okay, so we have that view. Okay, that's one part of it. So the second part of this is we actually want to create a video of this. So I'm going to come here and go to video, and I'm going to say I want to capture the current storyboard. The video resolution, I'm going to go ahead and crank up to 1920 by 1080. And the file name on this one is going to be miniature train project disassembly. I'm now going to be telling it where I want to save. So I'm going to come out here and go into my train project folder. I'm going to go ahead and select that folder. And then my file format here is I have WMV or AVI. I'm going to go ahead and pick on AVI and say OK. I'm going to do full frames uncompressed. I'm going to go ahead and say OK. So now it's going to start publishing that video, and it can take a little bit of time. Remember, it's having to basically render every single frame. I know these are going to be larger files, but they're going to look a lot nicer than the other codecs that we have available to us. So slight pause until this finishes up. Okay, so that is finished up. I'm going to go ahead and say OK. I'm going to go ahead and minimize this and jump out. And I'm going to go into my miniature train project folder. And we should be seeing that animation. So that was disassembly, miniature train project, animation. Yeah, miniature train project, disassembly. And if I pick on that, okay, sorry about that. Something happened with my VLC media player. So let's go ahead, let's try opening this file up. So it's going to be our disassembly. I say open. And this is what you should be seeing. So it's going to be everything that we just took care of. Basically playing it back in an animation. We have our trail origins on there. It's going to be sort of explaining how to disassemble this, this entire assembly. So if we want to now go from the disassembly into an assembly, what we have to do is go ahead and close this down. I'm going to be going back into Inventor. I'm going to be creating the video. It's going to be the current storyboard, but in this case, we're going to say reverse. Our window size, we're going to send it back down to 1920 by 1080. And our file name on this one is going to be miniature train project. And this time it's going to be assembly, making sure I talk to the correct folder. So I'm going to come out here and talk to the correct folder and say select it. It's going to be an AVI. I'm going to go ahead and say OK. And now it's going to be full frames uncompressed like last time. I'm going to say OK, and it's going to go ahead and publish this. So just like last time, it's going to be a little bit of a pause, but we should be seeing that assembly showing up here in the folder. So slight pause again. Okay, so this is finishing up. It's going to be telling us that that has basically been complete, so we can say OK. And I'm going to go ahead and open up my VLC media player. I'm going to go ahead and open up the file, look into my miniature train project, and I should be seeing my assembly. So picking on the assembly, I'm going to say open that. I'm going to play it, and now it's going to be in the reverse order. So now it's showing us how to actually assemble our assembly. All right, so those are the two videos you're going to need. You also have your snapshot view that you're going to be using within your IDW later. But that's really how to approach your IPN and how to tweak components and get everything to sort of work with you. And you're kind of good to go from there. All right, so good luck with that.